ultimately, the music of love lives in every human being. We are all notes in the symphony of loving. And when an ideology goes wrong, it's because it's a failed love story, right? But it is a love story at its root. And the fact that it's a love story means that if I can find its root, I can rewrite that story. Together, we can evolve that story. Together, we can rewrite that symphony. Right? We all stand together on the side of love. There's only one side. There's only one side. The side of love. Now, what we want to do, friends, in the next few minutes, and we have literally about 45 minutes, that's it. Every minute counts. Is I want to, with your permission, address this malaise that lives so deep in the culture. And it's the malaise of polarization. Polarization, this polarizing, these sides that are drawn up. When we draw up these sides, the assumption is that this side is all true and that side's all false. This side's all right, that side's all wrong. And the sides are drawn up based on boundaries that shouldn't be boundaries, based on superficial distinctions that shouldn't be distinctions, based on levels of ignorance that violate love's knowledge. The polarizations are drawn in order to give us comfort and to salve, S-A-L-V-E, to salve our sense of unmoored identity. And that's the way Homo sapiens always been. Homo sapiens always been in one way or the other, driven by rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics, in which ideas are part of the arsenal of conflict. And ideas are part of what forms my peoplehood or my personhood. The idea becomes part of my identity. And then I fight to defend my identity, whether that's my national identity, my ethnic identity, my racial identity. And old systems of discrimination, which were a horror, were based on these false divisions, this false taking of sides. Part of the postmodern response to the old systems of oppression is called identity politics, critical race theory, which themselves are false drawing of lines, forms of racism, forms of discrimination themselves. And so we need to come together in order to move from Homo sapien to Homo amor and say boldly and audaciously and dramatically, there's only one side. We stand on the side of love. And that's what we're here to do today. So are we ready, my friends? Are we ready to move from Homo sapien, the old human, to Homo amor? Are we ready to cross to the other side? This is the moment of the crossing. We're in a crisis. We're in a meta-crisis. The meta-crisis cannot be sufficiently addressed by evolutions of infrastructure, as important as they are, or by evolutions of social structure, as important they are. Infrastructure, new technologies, social structure, new laws, new communal models, new economic models, new governance models. Those are important, insufficient. We need new superstructure, which means we need, in our language, we need a new story of value, not just a new story, but a new story of value rooted in first principles and first values that can actually generate a new human and a new humanity. And only a new human and a new humanity, the movement from Homo sapien to Homo amor, can speak into the outrageous pain and generate outrageous love. A dear friend of mine left me a text on Friday where he said that a friend of his, who's a teacher actually, and an old woman that I knew back in the day, and she said to herself that Buddha's first noble truth, life is suffering, speaks to her so resonantly these days. And although I was coming from a very different place, I tried to ground the movement from Homo sapien to Homo amor back in 2011 in a couple of sentences. And the sentences were, we live in a world of outrageous pain. Full stop. No explanation, no theodicy, no theological justification, no reductive materialistic acceptance, no spiritual dismissal, it's all illusion. No, full stop. We don't turn away. We actually look at the pain. We live in a world of outrageous pain. That's true. Step 2, full stop. We live in a world of outrageous beauty. That's absolutely true. Full stop. Step 3, the only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. Step 3. Step 4, the only response to outrageous beauty is outrageous love. In order to move from Homo sapien to Homo amor, to generate a new superstructure, a new story of value, which births a new human and a new humanity, we have to become the new human. That's the crossing. That's the crossing to the other side. We become the new human. To become the new human, I have to move away from superficial boundaries, from superficial distinctions, from dominator hierarchies, and I have to actually stand on the side of love. But to stand on the side of love is not an intellectual cognitive move only. As we practice together at the symposium on world religion, we need to be able to look in each other's eyes and say, behold, you're beautiful, beloved. Behold, behold. And I need to actually evoke and feel. I need to feel the love rising in me. Even for people that I disagree with profoundly, even for people that I think are on the wrong side of things, we're still both on the side of love. Now, David's about to read the code, and we're going to go deep into this. But let me just try and kind of get it clearly. I'll give you an example. And we talked about this right before we started One Mountain when we did the pre-meeting. And it's so huge. It's so beautiful. You have a couple, and the couple are looking at each other, right? And they have these huge set of conflicts, and they're real. And each one has become an attorney, and they're collecting evidence against the other side. The other side just happens to be their beloved. So that means we're not on the side of love anymore. The beginning, the pivoting point in the shift and the transformation and the opening into love and into joy is when both sides of the couple, of whatever kind of couple, a romantic couple, a teacher-student couple, a friendship couple, a brother-sister couple, right? When each side realizes, no, we're not against each other. Let's say in a classical couple, both sides literally step onto the same side. And sometimes when I work deeply with a couple, we'll actually do that. We'll actually both stand. We'll start standing facing each other, seemingly against each other, and then both move to the same side, face in the same direction. We face in the same direction, and there's only one force we're against. We're against the force of unlove. We're against unlove. We're on the side of love. We're against unlove. Can you feel that? So we're not against each other. We both step onto the same side. There's only one side, the side of love. There's only one side, the side of love. We all stand together on the side of love. There's only one side, the side of love. We all stand together on the side of love. So we want to go into that. We want to express that. We want to articulate that. Let me just first say what that doesn't mean. What that doesn't mean is that there's no distinctions, right? Of course, it doesn't mean that. Love is not only an emotion, love's a perception, love's a capacity to see. And implicit in the capacity to see is the capacity to make distinctions. Either we live in a cosmos that has an ought, O-U-G-H-T, ought. Maybe we can put it in the chat box if anyone is up for that. Ought. Right? I ought to do something. If there's an ought in cosmos, then there are distinctions. Love is always about perception, and perception is always about seeing clearly, right? I can see clearly now, right? I can see clearly now, right? It's perception. And when I perceive, I make distinctions. So love doesn't mean a leveling of differences. That's not what love means. Love is the capacity to make distinctions, to deepen distinctions. And as long as there's an ought, there's that which ought be done, there's that which ought not be done. So love is not about an effacing of distinctions. Love is not about a leveling of differences. Love is about seeing clearly and realizing that in the end, we all stand together on the side of love. Okay, so let's go deep into that. Let's take it from a dharmic meme theme, if you will, and let's go deep inside. So we're going to turn to David. David's going to kind of blow us open and read us the code. And then we're going to spend whatever time we have, and I would like to go through, with your permission, in a very short amount of time, 10 principles. Okay, 10 distinct principles. I'm going to just say each one. Each one should be the subject of an entire one mountain, but let me just say each one so we get the general vision. What are the 10 principles of? There's no sides. We all stand together on the side of love. All right, the only side that exists is the side of love. And I was talking to a dear friend of mine on Thursday, and we had a beautiful conversation, right? And there was a moment of conflict in the conversation. It got hard for a moment. And then the sentence came down to us, right? There's only one side, the side of love, right? We all stand together on the side of love, and our hearts relaxed and realized, oh, of course, we're on the side of love, right? And it wasn't about content. It was about, where do I locate myself? I locate myself on the side of love, and we're together on the side of love. We stand against UnLove. Okay. David, blow us away, my friend. Here we go. Okay. Cha.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. So here's our code for today. There is only one side, the side of love. What that means about what should be done is a question of impossible complexity, pain, and uncertainty. We stand for a culture of Eros against a culture of death. We stand for intimacy against alienation. This requires us to be both tender and fierce, to stand for love against all forms of UnLove. So distinctions around value are an expression of love. Love and UnLove are real, but love and UnLove are not an inherent split on racial or national or ethnic or religious grounds. That kind of thinking itself is an expression of UnLove and an anti-value that in and of itself is the cause of so much horror. There is only one side, the side of love. We all stand together on the side of love. In our formulation here at One Mountain, Many Paths, good and evil is discerned simply. To be good is to stand for love. No one is outside of the circle of love. To be on the side of love requires the cultivation of radical discernment within a broken information ecology. There is only one side, the side of love. We all stand together on the side of love. And I turn my word back to you, beloved Dr. Mark.
Oh my God, David, thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful. That's gorgeous. Okay, are we ready? Do we have a drum roll? Are we ready, friends? Are we ready to go? Here we go. So, principle one. Principle one for we all stand together on the side of love. Principle one, laughter. The principle of laughter. That's principle one. You can't love unless you can laugh together. Laughter is the move from polarization to paradox. And those of us who have been together, and just so tenderly, my friends, we've talked about laughter over the years, but I want to bring it to the table here in this new way. To be on the side of love means I move from contradiction to paradox. I move from contradiction, which creates polarization, to paradox, which creates new poignancy, new potency, which allows me to say the promise will be kept. It creates new promise. Paradox means that I'm standing against Aristotle's law of the excluded middle. It's either this side or that side. It's either this way or that way. You know, in the lineage of Solomon, there's a very strong idea. You know, the master is issuing decisions, and a person comes to the master and says, you know, this is what happened. And the master says, oh, you're right. You're totally, I totally understand what you're saying. You're totally right. And then the second person comes, who's the litigant against the first person, and explains to the master what happens. The master says, oh, well, I totally understand. You're totally right. Then his beloved, right, his wife, right, storms in and says, I was listening, and you told the first person they're right, and the second person they're right, and how could you do that? And he looks at his beloved and he says, you're also right. You're also right. So paradox, right? Paradox, laughter, right? The ability to hold a larger view. That's what laughter does. Laughter cuts through the illusion of polarization. Laughter cuts through the pomposity of superficiality, through the surface identities, where my idea and my position is not emergent from my love, but it's my identity, or it's my superficial outrage without gnosis, without deep knowing. So laughter punctures easy certainties and opens the space to hold paradox, to hold the impossibility of paradox. So that's number one. And I'm going to watch our time here to see if we can do all of them. Okay. So number one, that's number one. So paradox. To be on the side of love, I require the capacity to hold paradox. To hold paradox, I require the capacity to laugh. And one of the most important dimensions of peacemaking is to actually be in a room together and to laugh together. 1, 2. And 2 is related to 1, but it's not quite the same. 2 is love is related to the dialectic, the movement between certainty and uncertainty. So to love, I need to see you clearly with a kind of certainty. I need clarity. I need to hold a deep clarity about my identity, about my vision. I need revelation in order to love. So love is certainty, because love is not merely an emotion. Love is a perception, and it has to be a perception that actually gives me some dimension of certainty. And yet, with my certainty, I hold uncertainty. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm able to bracket my certainty. Does everyone get that? Friends, Romans, countrymen, right? I'm able to bracket my certainty and step into uncertainty. Do you get that? I can step into uncertainty. Let me say it a different way. Love is the movement between revelation and mystery. So love always holds the certainty of revelation and the uncertainty of mystery. So I'm at the edge of mystery. Three, love requires the capacity to be intimate. Right? Love requires the capacity to be intimate. And the capacity to be intimate has a number of dimensions. And the first dimension is feel me feeling you. Feel me feeling you. You've got to be able to feel me feeling you. And I've got to be able to see your face. To love means we look at each other panim el panim, face to face. And I often mention Sam Keen's book called The Face of the Enemy, in which in propaganda posters, the face of the enemy is always effaced. The enemy never has a face, right? The face of the enemy. The enemy is not a monster. The beauty sees through the beast and sees a prince. Love is a perception that opens my capacity to see your face and to feel you. To feel you. So intimacy means I feel you and you feel me. That's the first level of intimacy. But there's a second level of intimacy, is I feel you feeling me. Right? Imagine in the midst of a war in which you not only feel the other side, but you feel the other side feeling you. War's over, right? Intimacy is the exact opposite of the structure of war. Right? The structure of war is to deface the enemy, right, and to shatter intimacy. So feel you feeling me, feel me feeling you. Okay, that's 3. 4. Love is connected to the capacity to hold deep time, not just surface time. And deep time means I don't only see what's in front of me in this moment in time, I can extend the time. An animal has, based on what we know, a large collective memory, but based on our experiment, a significantly shorter personal memory. So there's the memory of the herd, which is relatively extensive in its general parameters, but not detailed. And there's personal memory, which is relatively limited. So the capacity to extend time, to be out of the moment and hold past, present, and future. Right? So I'm not just looking at this moment. I'm both holding the past, 1, and 2, I'm holding the future. But I'm holding the past, right? This quality of 4. The quality of 4 is love is related to the capacity to hold deep time. So I'm not holding the past only from my perspective, only from the way I feel it. I feel the way you feel the past, and you feel the way I feel the past. We meet in the present, and then we have this vision of the future, right? So love, right, is the depth of the present in which is merged the deep memory of the past and the deep memory of the future, right? So when I see something in front of me, right, when I'm a mad lover, right, I'm drawn into the present, but then I extend beyond the present and I begin to see, right, a larger vision, right? Another way to say that is Another way to say that is that love has the capacity to place attention on past, present, and future, or love has the capacity to place attention on a storyline. And we have to be able to get a storyline. Right? What's the storyline? And we need to actually feel each other's storylines, right? In other words, so 3 is intimacy, feel me, feeling you, feel you, feeling me. That's 3. 4 is, right, I feel not only the immediacy of the moment, but I can feel, right, the larger storyline. Okay, right, so that's 4. 5, and 5 is big. Okay, 5 is love is connected to gnosis, to knowledge. To love is to know, which is why to know is always to know intimately, to know carnally. And Adam knew his wife Eve. Right? Carnal knowledge is I know you sensually, means I can do sense making, means I have gnosis, I have knowledge. It means I can touch you, I can feel you, I know about you. So love can never come from ignorance, right? Love can never come from ignorance. Love always has to come from the deepest capacity for knowing, right? Love and knowledge are intimately related. So love can't be, okay, go slow. Love can't be dissociated from a base of facts. Facts are always important. And facts are not merely subjective, right? It's not just, right, everybody has their facts. That's not true. That's not true. There has to be a way to bring the facts together and get this larger perspective. Get this larger perspective, meaning I have to be, let me kind of say it a little bit differently. Number 5 is love is connected to gnosis, right? And gnosis means I want to know, right? To know, I have to be open. I have to be open. So I know what I know, then I'm open to new information. I'm prepared to be moved by you. I'm prepared to be moved by new gnosis, by new feeling, by new possibility, by new vision, by new facts, right? If people enter into a conversation and neither is moved by each other's adducing of new information and new fact and new gnosis, then they're haters, not lovers, right? Lovers are moved by each other. They affect each other. They impact each other, right? Because love by definition is a bracketing of the ego, right? And this is number 6, right? Love is a bracketing of the ego in devotion to the full emergence of the beloved. So love is a bracketing of the ego self. I bracket my ego self and I open myself in devotion to the fullest emergence of my beloved. I'm interested in my beloved. I'm curious about my beloved. I want to know how they feel. I want to know everything about them. I want to collect all the facts I can, both facts and feelings, both interior qualities and objective information. And that matters. That matters. Love can never emerge, and stay close, my friends, in a postmodern world in which the 2016 word of the year in the Oxford Dictionary is post-truth. If we are post-truth, we are also post-love. Love is a perception. It emerges not from ignorance, but from gnosis. Love unmoored from fact. Love unmoored from storyline can't be love. Now, we can have 2 different perspectives that we need to look at. We can have 2 different sets of feelings that we need to feel together. But we need to be open because we've bracketed our ego self. We're in devotion to each other's fullness, to each other's emergence. And so therefore, if I'm a lover, I'm impacted by you, right? Love's knowledge is the opposite of propaganda. Right? Propaganda means each side propagandizes or accuses the other of propagandizing. Differences are leveled and neither side impacts each other and no one ever changes their position because everyone's locked in a position which is not about love, it's about identity. Does everyone get that? It's not about love, it's about identity, right? My position is my identity. I can't compromise my identity. I'm like insanely filled with terror at not existing because I've lost my identity. My identity is my particular position. So I'm not a lover, right? I'm a narcissist. A lover means I bracket myself, that's number 6, to be in devotion to your emergence. Therefore, I'm open to you and I'm open to be impacted by your information. And your information informs you, and I'm willing to let your information inform me. I'm informed by your information. Does that make sense, my loves? Okay, that's 6. 7, the 7th quality of we're all on the side of love. Right? We're all on the side of love is that love is, and we said this earlier as part of a different number, but this really deserves its own number, which is that. Now stay close, stay close, stay close, stay close, stay close. This is beautiful, okay? We're doing awesome. Okay, we're doing awesome, okay? Right? Which is love is not merely a feeling, love is a perception. So therefore, perception means, right, means I'm placing my attention. To love is to place attention. That's why sexuality is love in the body, right? Because in sex, right, in its ultimate beautiful sense, I place my attention on you. And I bracket myself and I place my attention on you. And by placing my attention on you, I become more full, right? More dramatically myself, because I've dramatically bracketed myself in devotion to you. That's the perception of loving. And when I perceive, I make distinctions. So love makes distinctions. Love does not, that's how we began, but this is number 7. Now we're ordering it with permission. Love makes distinctions. Love perceives distinctions, right? Because there's an ought in cosmos, right? If there's an ought in cosmos, it means something ought be one way, then it ought be, it's better that it be that way than it be a different way. There's a better in worse. Okay, love implies that something's better than something else, because, right, love means I see distinction, right? And I see an ought. Okay, and this is one of the great mistakes, the way that people talk about unconditional love, right? Unconditional love means I level all distinctions, nothing matters. No, that's not what love. It's not what love means. Love means I make distinctions. Or love's the capacity to make distinctions. To love you means I see you. Now, I see you means I see beneath the surface. I see your essence. I see your infinite specialness. I see your irreducible uniqueness. I don't get caught only on the surface expressions of you. I'm able to see deeply, right? I can see clearly now. It loves a clarity, right? But remember, it's a clarity, that's distinction too, but which also holds mystery. Okay, so that's number 7. Number 8. Number 8's a big one, okay? Love means I stand for my transformation and your transformation. Love is the energy of transformation. So love means that I'm not tyrannized by yesterday. That's unimaginably beautiful and unimaginably important, right? Love is the possibility of possibility, means love is the possibility of a new tomorrow. Love means we can transform. So I'm just going to give you one example. For those of us who think that we can't move beyond even atrocity, right? We have to move beyond atrocity, right? Not easily, not glibly, not with a kind of instant forgiveness. That would be absurd. But ultimately, right, we don't today demonize every German in Germany, even though Germany, not that many decades ago, affected a true genocide, right? The intention to kill every last Jewish person on the planet, if possible. That's what genocide means. The desire, right, to eradicate an entire people to every last person, period, for its own sake. That's what genocide means. That word's thrown around a little bit insanely these days, right? That's what genocide means, right? And that was a clear intention of the German government, right? And as Daniel Goldhagen wrote in a book called Hitler's Willing Executioners, I think when he was at Harvard, right, that enjoyed enormous popular support, enormous tragedy, right, beyond imagination, right? Killed most of my family. But that doesn't mean that today, right, we demonize every German or even Germany. or we actually can recognize that Germany went through a process of transformation, right? That seems apparently real. And we can actually embrace and ally ourselves with Germany, right? Some 70, 80 years later. How is that even possible? It's only possible because of love, right? Love always creates the possibility, right, of a new tomorrow. Okay, that's 8. 2 more. Okay, 2 more. Let's go slow. Love demands the principle of post-tragic embrace. Pre-tragic seems like loving before the tragedy strikes. Tragic, the tragedy strikes. There's no room for love. Post-tragic is when we love after the tragic. We love after unbearable pain. So love requires post-tragic consciousness, right? It requires a radical embrace of the post-tragic. And here's 10. Love requires a realization that that which unites us is far greater than that which divides us. And love has to be a culture of love, right? A culture of Eros. Meaning to love means we need a set of shared first principles and first values that allow us to stand together on the side of love, right? Now, it doesn't mean that we need to have the same full worldview. It doesn't mean we can't disagree on radical dimensions of reality. We can. But there needs to be a core grammar of value that we share. Okay, we need a shared grammar of value, a shared language of love, right? A shared recognition that every human being is worthy of love in order to stand together on the side of love, right? So and here's where it gets very, very, very subtle, my friends. And in order to articulate, to formulate, to tell that new story of value in which we all participate in a musical score, which is Eros, right? In the shared grammar of value, we need vision and imagination. Okay, now I want to say something here that's impossible. So even when there's a necessity of what the Dalai Lama has referred to by various languages, but it's what you might call a just war, right? So for example, the war against Nazism, many people would think was a just, a necessary war. I'm not saying it was or it wasn't. I think it was. But let's say there's something, even when I participate in a just war, I can't demonize the person who in this moment is my enemy. Because if we would do that, if we would basically say that my enemy is inherently demonic forever, and then we have war forever. then we can't have transformation. Then we can't have Nazi Germany transform into post-war democratic Germany that rightly or wrongly absorbed more refugees than any other European country. We have to allow for the possibility of transformation, and to allow for the possibility of transformation is to stand against demonization. Now, in order to do that, I need to be able to recognize, right? And this is a principle of love. I need to trace every story back to its root, right? In other words, even if my enemy has a story which is in violation of everything I believe in, I've got to try and find the root of that story. I've got to trace the surface of the story back to the root. I need to locate the spark of the sacred at the root, and then help my enemy tell a new story that emerges from their vision of value. That's subtle what I just said. But in other words, let me try and state it clearly. This is part of number 10. Right? I can't demonize the other in a way that they become subhuman, even if they behave in a way that's a violation of all of humanity, and I need to respond fiercely in the moment to protect. Nonetheless, I need to be able to engage in what I would call the Tantra principle of non-rejection, which says that I've got to trace everything back to its root, and I have to find the spark of the sacred even in what seems to be the most broken vessel, in order to hold the possibility that that vessel can become whole again. You know, there's a text in Talmud Sanhedrin, in the Talmud, in the 3rd century, that says when I take out a person to be executed, but I'm still under the command of love your neighbor as yourself. I still have to love the person, right? Even at that painful moment. We all stand together on the side of love. Doesn't mean that there are no distinctions. Doesn't mean we level differences. It means that ultimately, the music of love lives in every human being. We are all notes in the symphony of loving. And when an ideology goes wrong, it's because it's a failed love story, right? But it is a love story at its root. And the fact that it's a love story means that if I can find its root, I can rewrite that story. Together, we can evolve that story. Together, we can rewrite that symphony, right? We all stand together on the side of love. There's only one side. There's only one side, the side of love, right? We all stand together on the side of love. So mad love, everyone, mad love.